Thank you, Sendil, for the kind introduction, and a big congratulations for the very successful maiden workshop on management. Because very often when we do these sessions in AAOS and such conferences, it is no exaggeration. Oftentimes the audience are the speakers. Now we'll have like 4 or 5 people in the audience. So this is a huge testimony to your organizational skills. So I'll spend a few minutes talking about the topic given to me, systems for effective eye hospitals. And even though the topic reads as from Aravind experience, I thought what will be more useful is to talk about how the process or the way we go about developing systems rather than talk about what we do in Aravind. Of course, I'll draw upon a few examples. And what I want to present is 3 or 4 broad paradigms of how we think about systems. And the first one is to recognize that we can look at every organization from different perspectives. And one I found to be very useful is to look at an organization from a demand and supply perspective. Because in every organization, that's what it's really made up of. You have certain parts of the organizations which provide whatever it needs to, in our case, eye care. And then there's always the other side that you are providing to, which is the demand side. And then there are multiple areas within both of them that needs to be worked on, which is where the role of systems come in. But then the common fallacy that we have is that we essentially focus on a few things. In terms of an organization, I think all of us can reflect back when we are developing a practice or a hospital. The tendency is to focus largely on the supply side. And even within that, it's quite often focusing on what money can buy. Of course, you have the challenge of raising the money as well. But then that's what we focus on the building, on the equipment, and hiring the staff, and so on. And then we let the demand side to kind of evolve organically, somehow. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And so it's critical that we kind of take a very comprehensive view of all components of both demand and supply side and work on everything. Even on the supply side, many of us don't really work systematically on things like quality, staff motivation, and many other areas. So that is one common paradigm, common framework for looking at systems. The second one is all of us have a lot of intentions that we should provide patient-centered care, patient safety, and give the best quality. So all of this is something which all of us aspire. But then we must recognize that such intentions are definitely necessary in any organization, but they're not sufficient to bring about them into a reality. So this is where I think you will need to do some element of decoding. Because otherwise it becomes more or less like Shining India, or it becomes a slogan. It doesn't really translate into action. So unless we demystify it and decode it and simplify it, it doesn't mean anything to the rest of the staff. So I'll run through a couple of examples of patient-centered care and patient safety. So in our own situation also, we were in the very same bucket. This is some of the newer developments within Aravind. Sometimes you can bring in patient-centered care just through bull force, that the senior people, 10 of you are there, you're making sure that nobody is rude to the patient, the place is clean. You can really do that through a lot of being on the ground and then really yelling at people and doing that kind of a thing. But that doesn't work. You can't sustain that, and you can't sustain it or you cannot do it as the organization grows into multi-locations. So a few years back, we sat down and took the trouble of decoding what we mean by patient-centered care. And this is the 10 points that we came up with. This is not necessarily universally applicable, but I think the point I'm trying to make is that every one of you can develop your own 5 points, 6 points, 10 points of what patient-centered care means in your situation. And then one thing you will realize as you look at these 10 points is that this is much more actionable than saying I will provide patient-centered care. No, it is more actionable to say I will create easy access for the patient. And then once you do this, and then you can see it becomes even more easier to make each of those 10 points actually a reality. When you talk about creating access, I mean, all of this, again, I'll touch on later also, the way you come up with this breaking down and then into how do you develop various systems for each action point, the more you do it with the people who are actually going to be doing it, then it becomes a working system. Otherwise, it remains a bit on the paper or on manual or something like that. So we said for us access means having the hospital open for a longer period of time. Some of the government facilities tend to be open for very short period of time, 7 to 10 or something like that. Now for registration. Then how do you deal with emergency cases? And we avoid giving appointments or forcing appointments because we recognize that introduces an access barrier by itself. And then being considerate on advising for follow-up and repeat visits. So all these points came up when we talked about patient-centered care, and each one of them got acted upon. And then we have fairly robust systems now to actually make sure that we are moving towards good patient-centered care. And another nice thing about systems is that once you have them in place, they become measurable. Otherwise, it gets much more difficult to do that. And then similarly, given our volumes, we really had to ensure high level of patient safety and good outcomes. And again, we went through the same exercise of decoding it. So we came up again with 10 points. There's nothing magical about 10. It's just that in these two instances, it happened to be that. And some of these are fairly standard. It's more universal than just for Aravind alone. So these are the various things, eliminating medical diagnostic errors, correct medication, correct glasses, minimizing physical injury, and so on. So again, I'll take one example just to kind of give you the feel as to how the systems can be developed. Because once you recognize these are the 10 things that you got to fix to make sure that you're giving a high level of patient safety in the caregiving process. And the most fundamental one is that you're treating the right patient, the right eye, and then doing the right procedure. May sound very simple, but then I think many of you would have personal experiences to relate to this. I don't know if this is visible, but then if each of our clinics see about 100, 150 patients a day, and then it's not uncommon to have at the same time multiple patients living. Here you can see there are about 13 Lakshmis, and then there are about a few with the same initials. So you call Lakshmi M, and then you're not sure who comes and sits in front of the slit lamp. So how do you kind of make sure that you are treating the right patient? And of course, obviously, another good trigger for developing systems is when you make mistakes. Now, when the errors happen, you ask one question, will this error happen again? But if the answer is yes, then I think you really have to build a system to avoid it. And in this case, the way we went about doing this was, Yeah, I mentioned this already, yeah. So we went about establishing system for doing this, and it takes a bit of a time, because sometimes the systems depend upon staff behavior. So what we told was that the doctor must check the name of the patient with the case sheet, and then what they would do is, it's not moving. Can this be advanced? One. Okay. So in the manual system, which still is operational in some of the hospitals, the doctor or any of the technician examining the patient should get the patient's ID card and physically verify that it is same as in the case sheet. Very difficult to enforce, but then at least through a lot of training and review process, we had some of this in place. It's not advancing. Okay. So when the EMR came, we built this into the EMR. So there is a waiting list that shows up for each doctor or a refractionist or wherever the patient is waiting. And then next. One more click, yeah. So here, the case sheet will not open up till they physically enter the last 3 digits of the patient's ID. So we are enforced, now we're able to mandate, because we now know that through the system, the chance of error is almost zero, literally zero, unless something else unimaginable happens. So we are now able to make sure that there will be zero errors in treating the wrong patient. Next slide, please. And then this happens also in the operating room. We have every patient gets a barcode, which is scanned, and the same is done in the next, in the wards as well. Next. So, and whenever you build a system, I think it's important to have good data feedback. I think one of the previous speakers also mentioned that you need to have a good feedback system. And this has, we monitor, because patient safety, we are monitoring all the things that we are putting in the system for. Is it the right patient? Is it the right procedure, right IOL, right eye, and all those things. And this is where we were a couple of years back. Wrong IOL design, 2 patients out of a lack of surgeries, it happened. Wrong eye block, 2 patients, but that somehow seems to have been caught because we didn't operate on the wrong eye. And then, okay, once you get this number, how do you get this 2 to 0? So at that point, our system was to put a mark on the operated eye to be operated on the upper, just above the eyebrow. And we used to put a bandage. So oftentimes, the bandage was blocking it. And so then we said, oh, that's the reason. So then we started putting marking on both sides, the top and in the bottom. And then we had like a small timeout at the time of giving a block. There's always a nurse to be present when the doctor is giving the block. The nurse will call out the eye, and then the doctor gives the block. So now that has become 0. So this mechanism for getting a feedback, monitoring data, that's again integral to developing systems. Next slide, please. And then it's important to recognize that the systems are never static, because everything around us is changing, from patient expectation, technology to everything. So we really have to make sure that we're also continually evolving. So which is what makes it very critical. So system really allows you to collect the right data. If you don't have a system, then you can't really collect, you don't know what data to collect. But once you have a system, then you know what data to collect. You collect the data, you sit with the people, you analyze, and then if there's scope for improvement, you figure out what to do, and then that cycle kind of keeps going on. Next slide, please. And then Coming to conclusion, I want to say that the systems are only as good as they are used. I'm sure this must be almost everyone's frustration that we have the right policies and systems and procedures, but people don't follow it. So this is a common frustration that I think plagues every one of us. So some of the ways that one can address it, because not every system can be made into a technology like we're able to do for patient, right patient. Like medical record will not open unless they enter the 3 digits. There it is actually a system which doesn't really depend upon patient behavior, staff behavior, but you can't do that for everything. So there is a big element of systems that will work only if the staff does it properly. So you have a better chance of the staff working on it if they are involved in the design and development of the system. If it is something parachuted from some other hospital, or the top man says you got to do this from tomorrow onwards, very likely there will be a lot of resistance or not following through, and then really change really may not happen. And then building the right DNA in the organization. That is again very critical. Without the right DNA, the systems really don't work. And it's also important to have a common goal, which can align the organization. This also becomes very, very important. Next slide, please. So building the DNA is not really a systems thing, but I think this is what really makes an organization and the systems work well. So how would you make everyone in the organization wanting to do the best for the patient? I think if that DNA is there, then more than half a battle is won. And this can't be done through a circular or through a video or through a talk. It is something which you have to live through. Sometimes it helps to let everyone in the organization know how what they do contributes to the purpose or the outcome of the organization. Now, how does a sweeper know that cleaning the floor helps in better eye care delivery? Now, who will make the connection to them? Taking the effort and time to make that connection, because I remember Dr. V used to have frequent classes for the sweepers, talking to them about why their work is very important, how their work can really bring down, at one level, infections, and other level, give that feel of a clean hospital to the patient. The leaders, not just the top person, I think that cohort of leaders have to walk the talk. And so without that, the systems never get embedded. That's very critical. And what we have found to be most useful is holding the mirror. Holding a mirror in the sense, frequently giving a feedback, reflecting on if there was some downside, what caused it, what could we have done to avert it. Now, can that become a routine procedure? So having that conversation frequently. And we do that at a fairly, like for example, our outreach is a very big process within Aravind. We do about 2,500 eye camps in a year. So that is reviewed at a great microscopic detail every week for about 3 hours. With the team which does it, and with one of the doctors who is assigned to or in charge of outreach would do that. The complications in the theater, they are discussed every week for about an hour or so. So there are lots of these review meetings, and there, at one level, one can see there are too many meetings, so time is being taken. But these are all what builds the DNA in the organization. These are all what continuously improves what we do. And then as we're doing this, we should also make sure that we're eliminating any conflicts between the purpose and what we do. Sometimes those conflicts can happen unconsciously. We need to surface and rectify them. Next slide, please. So this is, I feel, this kind of ongoing work, I feel, is what has helped us grow over the years from a 11-bed hospital in a rented house to a network of 6 large hospitals, 6 secondary hospitals, and lots of primary eye care centers. Next, please. Next. So it has also helped us to continually grow, because if you're reflecting every week, every day on what went wrong, how things can be better, I think it's inevitable that things will be on the increasing path. Next slide. So the volume of work is steadily increasing, fairly close to 5 lakh surgeries and other procedures last year. And part of, like in our case, more than half the patients get the care for free. But then building the DNA that those errors that you saw apply to all the patients, not only the paying patients. So how do you create that kind of equity mentality in the staff that work for you? All of that is partly DNA and partly systems. Next slide. So in conclusion, I want to kind of re-emphasize, to build effective organizations, we need to have systems, and the systems is what aligns people to certain functions or activities. If it is sterilization, outpatient work, good systems, good protocol aligns everyone in the team to do that in a consistent manner. And then it is the culture and values, and that's also equally important, because that's what aligns people. So you want alignment both for the activities and for the purpose. I think when they both happen, I think you build an effective organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for giving valuable inputs. I now request Dr. Ramesh Durerajan to present a memento to Mr. Thulasiraj.